Hello, darlings. To complete the Human Design Motivation series, I have the other motivations uploaded if you would like to check them out. We are talking about innocence today. Beloved innocence. I'm excited to get into it. Excuse me. Excited to get into it with you all. I have a beautiful quote to launch us off to speak about innocence, so I'll read that to you now. I have another one I'm going to end the video with that I think encapsulates being motivated by innocence so beautifully. So the first one is, there is no truth, there is only perception. What you see is not what others see. We inhabit parallel worlds of perception bounded by our interests and experiences. So beautiful. And this, I felt, was the beautiful introduction to innocence, because innocence is about that sixth line on the roof point of view. It's about perspective. It's about a higher minded vision. Innocence is here to maintain that on the roof view, the wider view, seeing through the lens of source, if you want to put it that way. Innocence beings have the ability to assist you in zooming out and reminding you that you will get there. You're just on the journey, and there's just a little hiccup, and there's just a little spot that might feel a little tense right now. But ultimately, they are wonderful guides to let you know you're still moving from A to C. You're just at B, and just continue onward. And I love them for this. This is when they are in their true alignment. Innocence motivation people. And as always, I'm going to include a really beautiful, beneficial blog that I think encapsulates the motivations so perfectly. And you'll find the other motivations there too. I've linked them up in the other videos. But the journey for innocence motivation is to understand that they are not here to get into the weeds of things. Leading by your own example and finding what feels most authentic and aligned for you is your primary motivation in life. While you may learn and develop many tools and systems to allow you to help others, your message is more universal than personal. Think of the role model archetype. So a role model archetype is designed to lead through inspiration. One of the most beneficial things that I think innocence motivation can learn to understand is that you're not here to be relatable, you're here to be aspirational. You're here to be inspirational. You're not here to be necessarily attainable. So lead, own, embody, be seen, be visible, be proud of that. Now, of course, this motivation is filtered through your profile and your authority and your type, and so it's going to show up differently in different beings. I have a lot of innocence beings around me. I grew up in the middle of two projector brothers that have innocence motivation. And so clearly, God knew that I needed that role model energy around me. And it makes a lot of sense. Me being a hope motivation, innocence feels very easy for me to coexist with. Hope sees the light at the end of the tunnel. It is inspired by the struggle and the knowing that the rainbow always comes after the rainstorm. Innocence is here recognizing how important the rain is and how important the thunder is and the fires and the catastrophes and also the beauty. It has the ability of the bird's eye view of all things to see there's divinity in it all. And so my brothers really, in their own individual ways, again, because they have different profiles and different authorities, reminded me of innocence. And one of the most beautiful ways they did that was through play. And innocence for me, I would always describe as a playful energy. They have this way of being very accepting and open to where you're at and what you're bringing to them and what you're presenting. And they have a way of bringing lightness to it. And I think comedy does that. Comedy, takes, a lot of really good comedians take a really hard story and bring brightness and lightness to it by humor. I think of Theo Vaughn. I have no idea what his motivation is. I don't even know his human design, but sometimes it's hard to know with those people who Like, do we actually have their real birth time? I get skeptical of those things. Anyway, he will talk about, his drug addictions and some crazy stuff that he did while he was just like strung out on drugs, and he'll bring humor to it and lightness to it. And I know in a way it's also healing for him, because he's like, let me make gold out of this really shitty, bad choice. And, our misaligned choice that just led to likely a ton of suffering at the time. And now just bringing gold to it and bringing this big perspective and like bringing playfulness to it. And I think of lightness when I think of my innocence beings in alignment. Now, as we speak about with all the motivations, there's a transference. Transferred motivation is when you are holding hands with your shadow, and it'll likely be very familiar to you. I know mine is for me. There's no shame, there's no blame, there's just recognition and awareness, and then pivoting once you have the awareness. And so for innocence, the transference is desire. And desire relates to the third line, which is trial and error, experimentation. We'll just try it, do it, and figure it out as we move through. And this is correct for some beings who have a desire motivation. For innocence motivation people, going into desire gets into the weeds of things. They start to want to control where things go. Desire is very much so compass oriented. They are the compass. We're going north, never mind, we're going south. And that is correct for them. When innocence people drop into desire, they likely won't even be seeing clearly. They're not meant to lead in that boots on the ground way. They're meant to lead by being the beacon, the embodiment, the light on the roof that we can see. We can see through their life and through their success or through their story how they are motivated. So their example is what leads. And if they would like to lead more effectively, they have to work on themselves and then show it and be seen. So innocence people can sometimes run into issues when they're not visible, or they're instead focused on the nitty gritty, the desire motivation of, well, they should do that, and if they would just do that. Instead of saying, well, how can I inspire or influence just by becoming better in my own regard, and then being visible and seen and attainable. Should someone ask for assistance or ask for a perspective, I'll be up here and able to give it to them. So really being mindful of the shadow of arrogance, which will keep you hidden and reserved, and then being mindful of the shadow of that desire, which is very controlling, very bossy, and it's borderline manipulative. And again, if you're an innocence motivation and you drop into desire, you'll feel it. This is not a surprise to you. This should not be a surprise to you, I should say. So for a sort of mundane example would be, I have a dear friend. She lives in Sweden. Dear, dear, dear friend. And her motivation is innocence. And when we're making plans as far as where to go to dinner, let's say we're both visiting each other and where to go to dinner, and maybe we've met in another country we both don't live in. My hope motivation is like, I'm sure we'll find something. It's London. How can we not find something? Let's look. And I'll explore and look and, sort of use my sensations to get a feel for the place, if I would like being there, and if I feel it's, would be enjoyable for us. And her innocence motivation really just, when she's in alignment, just holds this knowing that we're going to eat. Like, it's all going to be good. We're going to figure it out. And then there were times where instead of finding this amazing, awesome, very London place, we ended up eating down in the restaurant of the hotel because the places had closed or they were too far or whatever. And instead of her getting caught into the weeds of things and maybe trying to control or manipulate, she was just so surrendered to, we will end up where we're meant to end up, and we're going to get food tonight. It's going to be all good. And no matter what, it's going to be an adventure because we're going to have fun because we're together. And so it was just, even those nights where we ended up eating in in a hotel restaurant that is, less than glamorous and less than what London could have given us, it was still magical. it was still perfect. We both maintained our motivation and our alignment and our aura, and for that I wouldn't trade anything. I wouldn't trade this really cool restaurant that we would have had to manipulate things in order to get to in time, and etc., etc. So Innocence people can be very easy, go with the flow, and her embodiment of trust, of we'll end up at the right place at the right time, really let me dance in my hope of like, well, I wonder what would bring me the best feeling. I wonder what would be most inspirational. What timing would feel good? And, it really gave me a lot of freedom. And I think that's a really beautiful mundane example of how innocence and hope can dance with each other. And, I think for Innocence people, it's important that you recognize where there is leadership needed. So with our transference, it will play a role for you. Hope has a role played by guilt. Guilt is solution oriented. Hope holds the light, knowing you'll get there eventually. And so for innocence and desire, innocence also has that knowing of all is well. Everything is always figured out perfectly. Everything's right on time. We are on time. We are in the right place at the right time. Desire says, yes, and also we need to be here, here, here. Make sure all of that gets accomplished in the way that would be the smoothest. And so you have to recognize the amount of desire that needs to come into your life and when you're going into your transference. So it's a gas, brake, pedal situation. How much gas do you need? How much brake do you need in your car? And to get it calibrated where you're cruising. So, when you're on the highway and you're cruising, you don't need your brakes. So you might, if you're in alignment and you're cruising, brakes only come up when there's an issue, there's a pivot, there's an unexpected situation, right? There's someone else you got to calibrate your energy to. So think about it like that. That might be a beneficial way to work on the gas brake combo of innocence and desire. But from my experience and from my learning and studying of human design, I've recognized that we're not here to shame our transference. It will be present and it will play a role. And at times, a certain amount of it will be beneficial. For instance, an innocence person who's a parent, they're going to need to at some point lead the way. You are the leader. You are the head of the household. You are the guide, the guardian, the keeper, the protector. So leadership is required. Schedules are required. And so I'm not saying innocence people just live outside of the realms of human timelines, but they do it in a way of a higher minded, sort of Buddha-like nature. And that is where they'll be most effective, most calm, and seeing the clearest. So something to play with. I'm open to your feedback. I'd love to hear about it. It's not my motivation, so it's always a little foreign to me. I've learned through the lenses of my people and my friends and my clients, and always open to learn more. I love you all, and I'll see you tomorrow for something probably totally different.